The shadow moved with deliberate precision, its six-fingered hands trembling as they reached for the discarded food container at the edge of the human settlement. Vrisk had survived this way for 3 cycles now, scavenging, hiding, existing, in the spaces between noticed and forgotten on this strange world. The last survivor of the Nefari research vessel, he had been only a juvenile when the crash happened, orphaned in an instant when atmospheric turbulence tore their ship apart. The humans never found the main wreckage. The authorities had recovered some debris, made their reports about unidentified space phenomena, and eventually the story faded from their news cycles. But Vrisk remained, growing from frightened child to adolescent in the wilderness that bordered New Anchorage Colony. Tonight was colder than usual. The colony's thermal shields were operating at maximum, creating a dome of warmth that extended barely 30 meters beyond the perimeter fence. Vrisk felt the familiar ache in his joints that meant a deep frost was coming, his species' evolutionary warning system. He would need more than discarded packaging tonight. He would need real sustenance. His translucent outer membrane shimmered slightly in the moonlight as he crept closer to the storage units. Through slitted pupils designed for the dim red sunlight of his homeworld, Vrisk observed the patterns of the human guards. 2 passed each other every 17 minutes at the north corner. The automated scanner swept the perimeter every 4 minutes but had a blind spot near drainage conduit 3, a flaw Vrisk had discovered during his second cycle of observation. The risk was tremendous. In 3 cycles he had never ventured this close during active hours. But hunger and cold made dangerous companions, and tonight they were whispering louder than his caution. Timing his movement to the millisecond, Vrisk slipped through the blind spot, his body flattening to less than 6 centimeters as he squeezed through the narrow gap between the fence and the ground. The ability to compress his skeletal structure had saved him countless times, though the pain afterward always left him immobile for hours. Inside the perimeter, sounds assaulted his sensitive hearing nodules. Machinery humming, humans talking, the constant electrical buzz that seemed to permeate every human settlement. Vrisk stayed low, moving between shadows cast by the enormous storage containers. The food repository was ahead, marked by the familiar symbol Vrisk had come to recognize. He had almost reached it when an unexpected sound made his heart chambers constrict painfully, footsteps approaching rapidly, unscheduled, unknown. Vrisk pressed himself against the metal wall of a container, willing his skin to adapt to the coloration. It was an imperfect camouflage at best. His species were forest dwellers evolved to blend with vegetation, not metal and synthetic materials. The footsteps stopped, mere meters away. Vrisk didn't breathe, his respiratory functions temporarily suspended. A beam of light swept past, missing him by centimeters. Then a voice, deep, resonant in a way that made Vrisk's translator implant struggle to process the subharmonics. "I know you're out here. I've seen you before." Fear paralyzed Vrisk. In 3 cycles, no human had spotted him, let alone addressed him directly. "I'm alone," the voice continued. "No weapons. Look." Vrisk remained motionless but shifted his optical focus. The human stood with empty hands raised, the light source placed on the ground, male based on Vrisk's understanding of their dimorphism. Older than the guards, with facial hair containing strands of gray. Most alarmingly, he was looking directly at Vrisk's hiding place. "I've left food by the drainage conduit every 3rd night for the past month," the human said quietly. "I figured that's how often you come. The protein bars should be safe for you, they're synthetic." The words made Vrisk's mind reel. The mysterious packages he'd found, not accidental discards but deliberate offerings. His translator must be malfunctioning. "I won't report you," the human continued. "My name is Merrick. I was on the first response team after your ship crashed. I saw the juvenile footprints leading away. The others thought I was imagining things." The human, Merrick, slowly reached into his pocket and placed something else on the ground before backing away. "It's going to drop below freezing tonight. This might help." As Merrick disappeared around the corner, Vrisk waited 5 full minutes before approaching the object. It was a thermal generator, small but powerful, and beside it, wrapped in protective covering, was more food than Vrisk had seen in months. 3 nights passed before Vrisk returned to the settlement edge. The thermal generator had saved his life during the brutal cold snap, its gentle heat sustaining him in his hidden shelter beneath the twisted roots of a fallen mega oak. Throughout those days, his mind churned with conflicting instincts, the ingrained warnings about humans from his parents' teachings versus the undeniable act of kindness from the one called Marek. The Nepheri had observed humans from a distance for decades. Reports described them as unpredictable, territorial, occasionally violent, yet capable of surprising compassion. Walking contradictions, his mother had called them. As the xenobiologist on the research mission, she had been particularly fascinated by humanity's rapid technological advancement despite their emotional decision-making. Standing at the perimeter fence, Vrisk clutched the depleted generator. He had decided to return it, partly as thanks, partly to assess the true intentions behind the gift. The shadows stretched long across the frozen ground as the colony's artificial lighting created a halo above the settlement. Security seemed lighter than before. Perhaps the weather had reduced the patrol schedules. A soft crunch of snow behind him triggered Vrisk's flight response, muscles tensing to flee, but he forced himself to remain still when he recognized the deliberate heaviness of the footsteps. Marek was making noise intentionally, announcing his approach. "You came back," the human said, his breath creating clouds in the frigid air. "I wasn't sure you would." Vrisk turned slowly, facing a human directly for the first time. Up close, Marek was older than he had initially appeared, with lines etched deeply around his eyes and mouth. He wore the uniform of the colony's environmental engineering division with modifications that suggested seniority. "Generator depleted," Vrisk said, the words awkward through his translator implant. "Return." Marek's eyes widened, clearly surprised to hear speech. "You speak our language." Translator. "Damaged in crash, functions imperfectly." "My God," Marek whispered. "I knew you were intelligent, but—" He seemed to catch himself, composing his features. "Are you alone? Are there others?" Pain lanced through Vrisk's chest at the question. "Alone. Only survivor. Juvenile at crash. Time. 3 cycles now." Comprehension dawned on Marek's weathered face. "You've been a child alone on an alien planet for 3 years." He shook his head slowly. "How have you survived?" "Adaptation. Observation. Learning. Hiding." Vrisk extended the generator. "Why help?" Marek accepted the device, turning it over in his gloved hands. "Because it was right. Because no child should be alone no matter what planet they're from." He glanced toward the settlement, then back at Vrisk. "I have a maintenance outpost 2 kilometers east of here. It's off the security grid, my personal project. There's heat, food, safety." He paused. "And answers, if you want them." Vrisk's secondary heart fluttered with anxiety. Following a human to a second location contradicted every survival instinct. Yet something in Marek's expression, a softness around the eyes that reminded Vrisk of his own father, made him hesitate. "Trust. Difficult," Vrisk admitted. "I know." Marek smiled slightly. "Trust isn't given instantly. It's built like a fire, starting with a small spark, adding kindling carefully until it sustains itself." He reached into his pack and pulled out a small object, a handheld holoprojector. With a click, it illuminated the space between them with images, the crash site, recovery efforts, and official reports declaring no survivors. "I was there. I saw signs they missed. I've kept your existence to myself for 3 years." He deactivated the projector. "I'm not asking you to trust me completely, just enough to get warm and eat something that isn't scavenged." Snow began to fall around them, delicate crystals catching in Vrisk's sensory filaments. The temperature was dropping rapidly. Another night like this without shelter might be his last. "Show me," Vrisk finally said. "This outpost." They traveled in silence through the forest, Marek setting a pace considerate of Vrisk's smaller stature. After 40 minutes of steady movement, a structure emerged from between the trees, a modest building partially embedded in the hillside, its design minimalist and functional. Environmental monitoring station, Merrick explained, approaching a door that opened with his palm print. Officially decommissioned 2 years ago, but I convinced administration to let me maintain it for my research. Inside, warmth enveloped them immediately. The space was small but efficiently organized, with equipment lining the walls and a living area in the center. Most striking was a hearth containing actual flames, real fire, not the synthetic heating of the colony. Biomass fireplace, Merrick explained, noticing Vrisk's fascination. Old technology but reliable, never fails, even when power systems do. Vrisk approached the flames cautiously. Fire was sacred to the Nefari, a symbol of knowledge and community. To share fire with another was the deepest form of trust in his culture. 3 years ago, Merrick said quietly, placing food on a table, I made a choice not to report what I found. Tonight you made a choice to follow me here. He gestured to the seat across from his own. Perhaps we can both choose to stop being alone. The outpost quickly became Vrisk's sanctuary over the following weeks. Merrick had converted a storage room into a private space for him, equipped with a sleeping platform modified to accommodate his physiological needs. Most importantly, the human had given him access codes to enter and exit independently, a gesture of trust that Vrisk still found difficult to comprehend. Your language skills are improving, Merrick observed one evening as they shared a meal. The human had acquired synthesized protein compounds compatible with Nefari digestive systems, another mystery that Vrisk had been meaning to question. The translator adapts with usage, Vrisk explained, manipulating the eating utensils with growing confidence. And I have been studying your linguistic patterns. Merrick smiled, the expression crinkling the corners of his eyes. You're a quick study. Reminds me of my daughter. This was new information. Vrisk tilted his head, sensory filaments quivering slightly. You have offspring? I have not detected their presence here. A shadow passed over Merrick's features, his biorhythms shifting in a way that Vrisk's enhanced perception recognized as distress. Loren died during the polar expansion 6 years ago. Industrial accident. He stared into the flames of the hearth. She was an exobiologist, would have given anything to meet you. Understanding blossomed within Vrisk, the reason for Merrick's solitary existence, his willingness to help an alien creature, his knowledge of xenobiology that had allowed him to provide suitable nourishment. This explains many previously incongruous observations, such as how you recognized my species, how you obtained appropriate nutritional compounds, how you modified this dwelling for my comfort. Vrisk gestured around them. These are not the actions of someone acting on mere compassion. You have specialized knowledge. Merrick nodded slowly. Loren's research. After she died, I inherited her work, taught myself enough to understand it. He looked up, meeting Vrisk's compound eyes directly. Your ship wasn't the first Nefari vessel to approach Earth. The statement landed like a physical blow. Vrisk's outer membrane rippled with shock. Explain. 30 years ago, a Nefari observation probe was recovered in the Arctic Circle. Most of the technology was destroyed, but the biological samples and data storage remained intact. It was classified at the highest levels, but Loren was part of the research team. Merrick rose, moving to a locked cabinet that Vrisk had never seen opened. What I'm about to show you violates multiple security protocols. The cabinet revealed a preservation unit containing objects that made Vrisk's respiratory system stutter. Artifacts unmistakably Nefari in origin. Cultural relics, scientific instruments, and, most shocking, a communication device still bearing the insignia of the Scientific Exploration Council. The governments kept the technology, but Loren, Merrick's voice softened. She fought to understand your people as people, not just as advanced technology to be reverse engineered. Vrisk approached the artifacts, a six-fingered hand hovering over the communications device. This is a quantum entanglement transmitter. If operational, it could reach the Nefari homeworld. It's damaged, Merrick admitted. I've tried for years to understand how it works, but the principles are beyond our physics. I hoped you might know. Understanding dawned with startling clarity. You saved me because of your daughter's memory. You shelter me because of scientific curiosity. But you reveal this now because you want my technical knowledge. Merrick flinched as if struck. No, that's not. He stopped, shoulders slumping. Yes and no. I saved you because it was right. I kept you safe because no one deserves to be alone and afraid on a strange world. But yes, I also hoped. He gestured helplessly at the device. I hoped you might find your way home someday. The honesty was disarming. Vrisk's species valued direct truth, even when uncomfortable. He approached the transmitter, examining its components. I am not a technician. I was a child when we crashed. But I have basic knowledge of our communication systems. His fingers traced the damaged sections, memory supplying information taught in early education. The power source is depleted. The quantum matrix is intact, but dormant. He looked up at Merrick. With proper materials, I could attempt restoration. Hope illuminated Merrick's face, but Vrisk continued before he could speak. However, there is a complexity you have not considered. My presence here is unauthorized. Any transmission to my homeworld would reveal that Nefari have been observing Earth in violation of our own non-interference protocols. What would that mean? Merrick asked. For me? Potential exile for revealing myself to you? For humanity? Vrisk's outer membrane darkened with concern. Unknown. Our leadership is cautious with developing species. Your technological advancement outpaces your societal maturity. Some would advocate for immediate disconnection from Earth to prevent contamination. The fire crackled in the silence that followed, shadows dancing across the walls of the outpost. Outside, a storm was building, wind howling through the trees. So repairing this could help you get home? Merrick finally said, but might create problems for both our peoples. Precisely. Merrick studied the alien youth before him, this child who had survived alone for years through intelligence and adaptation. What do you want, Vrisk? Not what's safest or what's right by some rule book. What do you want? The question was startling, in its simplicity and profound in its implications. No one had asked what Vrisk wanted since before the crash. I want... Vrisk's translator struggled to convey the complex emotions. I want to belong somewhere again. The alert system shattered. The pre-dawn silence, its urgent wailing pulling Vrisk from deep meditation. Across the outpost, Merrick was already at the communications terminal, features taut with concentration as he scanned incoming data. Colony emergency, he explained grimly. Massive electromagnetic storm approaching from the north. They're calling. In all personnel. Vrisk moved to the observation window. Though nothing was visible yet to human eyes, his specialized vision could detect the faint auroral disturbance beginning to ripple across the upper atmosphere. This is no natural phenomenon. What do you mean? The pattern is too regular, too concentrated. Vrisk's sensory filaments extended fully, gathering data. On my world, similar disturbances preceded targeted electromagnetic pulses used for defensive purposes. Merrick's expression darkened. You're saying this is a weapon? Not necessarily intentional, Vrisk clarified. But the signature matches. Residual emissions from Nefari long-range scouting technology. He turned to face the human. I believe another ship from my world has entered your atmosphere, but its drive system is malfunctioning. The implications hung heavy between them. After 3 cycles of complete isolation, potential contact with his own kind should have elated Vrisk. Instead, he felt conflicted. If other Nefari arrived, discovery of his relationship with Merrick would violate dozens of protocols. The communications terminal chimed again. All environmental engineers report immediately, a voice commanded. Atmospheric shields at risk of overload. Civilian evacuation to subsurface levels in progress. Merrick hesitated, caught between duty to the colony and concern for Vrisk. I have to go. The shields are my responsibility. If they fail during this storm, thousands could die. I understand. Stay here, Merrick instructed, gathering essential equipment. This outpost has independent shielding. You'll be safe until I return. Risk's outer membrane pulsed with resolve. The colony shields were not designed to withstand Nefari drive radiation. I can help. Absolutely not. If anyone sees you, if the shields fail, discovery becomes irrelevant. Risk moved to the equipment storage, selecting items with decisive efficiency. My physiological structure is resistant to the specific radiation type. I can make modifications to your shielding that humans cannot safely implement. Merrick shook his head. I won't risk your safety. You have sheltered me, fed me, shared your fire. Vrisk's translator conveyed his determination perfectly. In my culture, such debts must be repaid. Besides, he added, with a gesture that approximated a human shrug, I have become attached to this settlement, to its occupants. The storm intensified visibly now, eerie lights dancing across the horizon as they debated. Finally, Merrick nodded grimly. We'll take my maintenance vehicle. Keep your environmental suit sealed. If anyone questions your presence, you're my assistant, from the southern outpost. He hesitated, then added, You understand that once you do this, there's no going back to hiding. One way or another, your existence becomes known. Perhaps it is time, Vrisk said softly. 3 cycles is long enough to live in shadows. The journey to the colony was tense, the maintenance vehicle struggling against increasingly violent wind patterns. Twice they had to stop, as electromagnetic pulses temporarily disabled the engine systems. Above them, the sky had transformed into a churning maelstrom of purples and greens, beautiful and terrifying. Colony New Anchorage loomed ahead, its massive shield generators already glowing white-hot with strain. Workers scrambled across elevated platforms, attempting emergency reinforcements. Several had collapsed, overcome by radiation that their protective gear wasn't designed to block. The primary generator will fail within 20 minutes, Merrick assessed grimly as they passed through the emergency entrance. Secondary systems are already down. Vrisk, concealed in the environmental suit that rendered him merely oddly proportioned rather than alien, surveyed the generators. The radiation is causing molecular excitation in your conductive elements. The failure isn't electrical, but atomic. Can you fix it? Not fix, adapt. Vrisk moved toward the central control unit. I need access to the programming interface. Merrick used his security clearance to bypass the safeguards, then stepped back as Vrisk's 6-fingered hands moved with impossible speed across the controls. What are you doing? Your shields attempt to block the radiation. Inefficient. They should instead. Vrisk's translator struggled for the appropriate technical term. Redirect. Channel. Like water flow around stone. Multiple alarms blared as Vrisk's modifications took effect, causing the shield pattern to flicker alarmingly before stabilizing into a new configuration. The strain indicators immediately began to drop. It's working. Merrick breathed, watching. The diagnostics. How did you... Chief Engineer Lorne. A security officer approached rapidly. Unauthorized access to primary systems detected. All modifications must be cleared through Central Command. Merrick positioned himself between the officer and Vrisk. Emergency protocols authorize field modifications when communications are compromised. Lieutenant, I take full responsibility. The officer hesitated, then nodded grudgingly. Central Command is requesting your presence for situation assessment. Storm intensity is increasing beyond all projections. On my way. Merrick turned to Vrisk. Stay here. Continue the modifications if needed. I'll handle command. As Merrick departed with the officer, Vrisk continued his work, aware that other engineers were watching with curious eyes. The environmental suit concealed his alien features, but his unusual movements and proportions were drawing attention. Through the observation windows, Vrisk could see the storm reaching its peak. Then, cutting through the atmospheric disturbance, a familiar shape that made his hearts clench with recognition, the distinctive silhouette of a Nefari vessel, far larger than the research craft that had been his home. This was a recovery ship, designed for planetary extraction operations. They had come for the crash site. After 3 cycles, the Nefari Scientific Council had finally sent a recovery team, perhaps triggered by the activation of the quantum transmitter he and Merrick had been attempting to repair. Vrisk's outer membrane darkened with realization. They hadn't come to rescue a lost child they believed long dead. They had come to eliminate evidence. Chaos erupted throughout the colony control center as the massive Nefari vessel descended through the storm cloud, its sleek obsidian hull absorbing, rather than reflecting light. Merrick found himself surrounded by panicking officials and security personnel, all demanding explanations he couldn't provide without revealing Vrisk's existence. "Unknown vessel approaching on non-standard vectors," announced the defense coordinator, her voice remaining admirably steady. No response to communication attempts on any frequency. "It's positioned directly above the old crash site from 3 years ago," observed a junior officer, triggering a sudden silence throughout the room. All eyes turned to Merrick, the colony's senior environmental engineer who had been first on that crash scene. The colony administrator, Pelrath, approached him with measured steps. "Chief Engineer Lorne, this seems an unlikely coincidence." Merrick maintained his composure, decades of frontier work having taught him how to compartmentalize crisis. The original debris contained unusual metals and alloys. Perhaps this storm is attracted to those components. "That theory doesn't explain a clearly artificial vessel," Pelrath countered. Her sharp eyes studied him intently. "Nor does it explain the remarkably effective shield modifications implemented by your assistant, whom none of us recognize." The moment had arrived sooner than expected. Merrick had hoped for more time to prepare the colony and humanity for the revelation of extraterrestrial contact. More importantly, he had hoped to protect Vrisk from becoming a scientific curiosity or worse, a perceived threat. Before he could respond, the communications officer called out, "Incoming transmission. It's audio only, using our own emergency frequency." "Put it through," Pelrath ordered. The voice that filled the command center froze Merrick's blood, not because it was alien, but because it was achingly familiar. "Colonial installation," said Vrisk, his translator conveying urgency despite its mechanical inflection. "The approaching vessel is Nefari in origin, recovery operation class, heavily armed. Standard protocol dictates thorough elimination of evidence following unsanctioned contact." Stunned silence gripped the room before erupting into demands for explanation. "Where is my assistant?" Merrick demanded, pushing toward the communications terminal. "Implementing final shield modifications," Vrisk replied. "Chief Engineer, the Nefari vessel's purpose is site sterilization. They believe all evidence of their existence must be removed." Pelrath's face hardened into grim understanding. "Including witnesses." "Correct. This assistant of yours," Pelrath said slowly, turning to Merrick. "He seems remarkably knowledgeable about alien intentions." The moment stretched between them, the colonial administrator's intelligence rapidly connecting, points that Merrick had kept separate for 3 years. Rather than denial, Merrick opted for the truth, or enough of it to matter now. "My assistant is an expert in xenobiology," he said carefully. "He's been studying the crash debris since the incident. On the observation deck, massive defensive weapons were being brought online. Archaic kinetic systems designed as last resorts against meteorites or hostile human vessels. Against advanced Nefari technology, they would be woefully inadequate. New Anchorage colony," Vrisk's voice continued. "I am modifying your shields to emit a specific frequency pattern. It will identify this settlement as aware of Nefari protocols and prepared to document any aggression to all neighboring star systems." Merrick recognized the bluff immediately. Vrisk had no way to broadcast anything interstellar, but admired the strategy. The Nefari's primary concern would be maintaining their society's secrecy. The threat of exposure might give them pause. "Unidentified assistant," Pelrath addressed the communication system directly. "You have approximately 10 seconds to explain why I shouldn't have security detain you immediately. Because in approximately 3 minutes, that vessel will be in optimal position to deploy atmospheric scrubbers that will remove 60% of this planet's breathable oxygen within a 12-kilometer radius. Your colony lies at the center of that radius." The security feed suddenly activated, showing Vrisk at the shield generator complex. He had removed his environmental suit helmet, revealing his alien features to the colony's monitoring systems. Collective gasps and exclamations filled the command center. "I am Vrisk, juvenile survivor of the research vessel that crashed here 3 cycles past. I have lived among you hidden, learning your ways." His large compound eyes reflected the emergency lighting, giving him an otherworldly glow on the monitors. "My people fear yours because you are unpredictable. They believe isolation is safer than contact." Marek pushed forward. "Vrisk, get to safety. I'll handle this." "No, Marek." The alien youth's sensory filaments extended fully, a sign of absolute resolution in Neferi body language. "I have made my choice. I will not hide while those who sheltered me face destruction." On the external monitors, the Nefari vessel had halted its descent, hovering ominously above the colony. Its smooth surface began to shift, panels reconfiguring, to reveal what were unmistakably weapon ports. "Administrator Pelrath," Vrisk continued, "I am transmitting shield modifications that will buy us approximately 12 minutes against their initial assault. In that time, you must evacuate all colonists to the emergency bunkers." Pelrath hesitated only briefly before turning to her security chief. "Begin evacuation procedures. Priority to children and medical patients." The command center erupted into coordinated emergency activity. Marek used the momentary distraction to access a private communication channel to Vrisk. "What are you planning?" he demanded. "You've exposed yourself to the entire colony." Vrisk's alien features softened in what Marek had come to recognize as his expression of affection. "The quantum transmitter we were repairing, it was successful enough to trigger their sensors. They came because they detected activation." "Can we use it to communicate with them?" "Yes, but not to negotiate." Vrisk's membrane rippled with determination. "To issue an ultimatum." Understanding dawned. "You're going to threaten your own people." "I am going to force a choice," Vrisk corrected. "Peaceful contact or exposed aggression. My people fear discovery more than anything. The possibility that their attack would be documented and transmitted will force the recovery team to consult the High Council." The plan was audacious, perhaps suicidal, but as the massive ship began emitting the resonance frequency that preceded atmospheric scrubbing, they had run out of alternatives. "I'm coming to you," Marek decided. "We do this together." As warning sirens blared throughout New Anchorage, Marek raced against time to reach the shield generators where Vrisk was making his stand. Not just for his human friend, but for 2 worlds poised on the precipice of either conflict or coexistence. The modified quantum transmitter hummed with an otherworldly resonance as Vrisk made final adjustments, his 6-fingered hands moving with practiced precision, despite never having completed such complex technical work before. Theoretical knowledge passed down through generations of Nefari education was proving remarkably accurate, if insufficient for complete confidence. "Will they receive the transmission?" Marek asked, sealing the door to the shield generator complex. Behind him. Throughout the colony, evacuation protocols continued, civilians streaming toward underground shelters with remarkable discipline. "They will," Vrisk confirmed. "Whether they choose to respond is another matter." The transmitter's activation sequence required a genetic confirmation, a safeguard against unauthorized use. Vrisk pressed his palm against the biorecognition plate, his membrane tingling as the device sampled his cellular structure. The central crystal pulsed from dormant amber to vibrant blue. "Remarkable," Marek murmured. "Technology that responds to biological signatures. In my culture, technology and biology are not separate domains." Vrisk positioned himself before the transmitter's reception field. They flow from the same understanding of existence. Above them, the massive recovery vessel had ceased atmospheric interference but remained in attack position. External monitors showed its weapon ports fully deployed, energy signatures building toward discharge capacity. "Transmission active," Vrisk announced. His voice shifted to his native language, a complex series of tonal vibrations that made the air itself seem to shimmer. The transmitter amplified these patterns, converting them into quantum signals that bypassed conventional space-time limitations. Marek watched in fascination as Vrisk communicated in his natural tongue for the first time since they'd met. Though he couldn't understand the language, the emotional cadence was unmistakable. Determination, challenge, and underneath it all, a profound sadness. When Vrisk finished, he turned to Marek. I have informed them that I am Vrisk, child of Nelavi and Tarozik of the Scientific Exploration Council. I have survived alone on this world for 3 cycles, and have been granted sanctuary by humans who chose compassion over fear. His outer membrane pulsed with emotion. I have declared formal union protection with this colony under ancient Nefari law. Union protection? Marek questioned. A sacred covenant from our pre-technological era. When a Nefari declares protection over non-kin, it carries the weight of biological family bonds. Vrisk's translator conveyed his grave tone perfectly. I have claimed you, all of you, as my adoptive family cluster. To harm you would be to commit familicide under our highest laws. The audacity of the strategy left Marek momentarily speechless. Will it work? It invokes laws older than our space travel technology, laws that even the Recovery Division cannot ignore without Council approval. Vrisk gestured toward the view screen. Now we wait for their response. They didn't wait long. The recovery vessel's energy signatures suddenly reduced, weapon ports reconfiguring into their closed position. The communications terminal activated with an incoming transmission. Visual, not just audio. The face that appeared on screen was unmistakably Nefari, but older with the distinctive cranial ridges of mature adulthood. The being's membrane displayed the formal coloration patterns of authority. Juvenile Vrisk, offspring of council members Nelavi and Tarozik, the elder Nefari began, translator converting the tonal language to human speech. Your survival defies probability calculations. The council believed with 99.7% certainty that all expedition members perished. Yet I live, Elder Korvax, Vrisk responded, recognizing the Recovery Division commander. I have adapted, survived, and learned much about our human neighbors. The elder's membrane rippled with what might have been discomfort. You have violated non-interference protocols. You have exposed our existence to an unclassified species. You have transmitted unauthorized quantum signals. Each offense carries severe consequences. I have violated protocols to survive, Vrisk acknowledged, but the humans violated no agreement in sheltering an orphaned child. His sensory filaments extended toward Marek. This human has shared his fire with me. In the old ways, that makes us bonded. Elder Korvax's compound eyes shifted to observe Marek. Human, do you understand what this juvenile has done by claiming union protection? He has bound his fate to your settlement permanently. Marek straightened. I understand that he's risking everything to protect people who have barely acknowledged his existence until today. I understand loyalty and courage when I see it, regardless of species. A long silence followed as the elder Nefari seemed to process this response. Finally, he addressed Vrisk again. The research vessel's mission was unauthorized. Your parents acted without council approval, believing that preliminary contact assessment was justified by humanity's accelerating development. His membrane shifted to a more formal pattern. Their judgment is now vindicated by your survival and the human response to your presence. Vrisk's secondary heart fluttered with sudden hope. You are not proceeding with site sterilization? The situation has evolved beyond standard protocols.